One. And we are live. Wow, exciting.
Oh,
Hello,
yeah.
Daniel. How are you doing?
Hello, John. I'm doing awesome. Amazing. I'm jumping onto your Facebook page right now because I want to share this on my page so that my Facebook friends can actually follow us along here. Here we go. It says that we're live.
Rock and
So
roll.
my Facebook, hold on. You can hear me now talking there. So I'm just going to share it on my feed. Post. Done. Cool.
Awesome. We're going to be talking about some interesting things, and some of those you'll see in the title above this post. That's going to include some about podcasting, some things that I'm actually a little skeptical about podcasting, some things that are pretty awesome. We're going to talk a little bit about being an influencer, what that means, what that looks like. I'm going to ask you some questions about some of the most interesting people that maybe some of the most interesting guests that you've had, and some of the most interesting opportunities that podcasting has given you. And then I think maybe we'll get into some things on platforms, live video, what's going on there, audio, who that reaches, that sort of thing. And then maybe some tips and tricks for people who are just getting started doing live, doing podcasting, or doing things like this. And we'll see how it goes. Does that sound cool?
Sounds amazing, but I've got a question for you, John. Before we jump in,
Good, go for it.
I have to say I'm very jealous of you because I went onto your profile before we got on here, and I noticed that cool little blue tick that you got next to your name, and I'm dying to get that because I have this massive ego, and I just want to say, look, I got.
I have a massive ego too, and I paid like $1 million for that blue tick. No. Sorry. It's I got that because I'm a journalist for a reasonably significant publication, or have been and still am, among other things that I do. And so you can get that. Obviously, if you're a CEO of a major corporation, you can get that. If you're a public figure, But alas, I am not a world famous artist or entertainer, singer, dancer, nor am I the CEO of a major public corporation. So,
Facebook needs to do its research because I'm a public figure. Look, I'm talking to you, John, so I must be a public figure. I mean, what the heck?
I see it. I get it. Absolutely. Awesome. Cool. So we're going to get started. I see that we have 7 live people with us right now. I know other people are going to join in later, and I know people are going to see this later as well after we're finished being live. Those of you who are live, jump in, add some comments, add some questions, and we'll address them as we go. And I'll show them live on the screen also because Daniel has showed me this cool new technology, BeLive.tv, in which we can do that with. So cool. Let's jump in. Daniel, let's first of all give me the 30 seconds on who you are, what you do, and what's cool about that.
Man, 30 seconds. That's not enough time. Okay.
Suck it up.
Cow. Okay, started out on a 6-figure salary when I was 23, then got laid off. 2008 hit me, got me broke, got evicted from my apartment with my wife and child, moved from I was in California, moved to London, worked in a grocery store for a year to pay the bills, hated every single second of it, quit after a year, started my own company, grew it, then had a nervous breakdown, fired all my staff, went to a hotel lobby with my laptop and my phone. I basically did a deal with a competitor of mine so I can outsource the whole. I hated dealing with managing people, and I wasn't able to scale. So I ended up scaling the business by pretty much outsourcing the whole thing to one of my competitors. That was about 8 years ago. Today it's thriving. I spend about an hour a week on that company. I live in Israel now with my wife and 4 children. I started a podcast show about a year ago, coming up to about 50,000 downloads, interviewed just over 60 people. That's been awesome. Love it. And then I recently launched a company called Get Featured, where we basically get people featured on podcast shows. That's pretty much, is that 30 seconds? Was that around? That was roughly 30 seconds.
Let me tell you a secret that I learned through interviewing possibly thousands of people over the years of doing stories for VentureBeat and Forbes and some other publications. I always say 30 seconds because I'm signaling to the person I'm interviewing, don't drone on for half a freaking hour about you and what you've done and how it's gone. So I say the 30 seconds, and then they go for about 2 minutes, like you did, and it's perfect. So awesome. Good job.
I wish you would tell some of the people I have on my show that, because sometimes you get people on the show and they just go on and on and on, and they don't,
Now you know the trick. And I don't know, maybe all your 4 kids are watching high def 4K videos on YouTube right now, but getting some interference in the audio. I'm hoping that's not coming through for live. I'm hoping that's just on the interface that I'm seeing. So, but hopefully we're all good here.
Well, you're getting some interference with the audio?
Yeah, it's just a little not great quality, but hopefully those who are watching and those who will be watching will be having great experiences. But let's get started. I think we're going to be good. While Daniel tells his kids to get off YouTube.
My kids are all tucked in bed sleeping, but my wife needs to switch off the air conditioning because that's probably what's making the noise.
Okay, no worries. We're all good. Awesome. So we're going to get started. Everybody knows what podcasting is. A lot of people listen to a few podcasts here and there. Tell me why you started podcasting and what it's done for you.
Okay, great question. So, interesting story. I did. What happened was I got a guy who invited me onto his podcast show. This was about a year ago, and someone recommended that I go on his show. So the first question I had was, "What's a podcast?" I had no idea. I don't know what sounds weird, like podcast. Like, what is that? So he said it's like a radio show, except it's like online. It's pretty much the best. And the way that I explain a podcast to people who don't know what it is, imagine what Netflix is to TV or YouTube is to TV. So podcasting is to radio.
Yes.
I went on his show. So I said, yeah, for sure. That sounds amazing. I've never done anything like it. And as you can tell, I love to talk. So I had a great time. We had a good laugh. I shared my story. And at the end, when it was over, I was like, that's it. It's over. I want more of this, So I said to him, how do I start my own podcast? So he said, well, I'll teach you. I could show you how to do it. And literally within 2 weeks, I had my first episode. I actually remember getting in front of the mic. Like, I ordered the mic on Amazon, and I got the mic in, and I had the software put up. And I'm standing there in front of the mic, and I'm going, because the first episode, you kind of have to introduce yourself and who you are. Like, normally I have guests on my show, but the first one, it's just me, right? And by the way, that's much harder because you don't have anyone to sound off. You kind of just talk.
I get it.
It's really weird. So I think I did it about 16 or 17 times until I finally just was like, screw it, I'm just going with this version and that's it. I'm just going to send it. And I remember hitting publish, and I was like, no, it's out there. But literally since then, it's been incredible. So the first few shows, I pretty much just looked in my network, like my immediate network, like who has an interesting story, who's done really well in business, because it's basically a business show. And so it was just like a couple of mates, really. And it went really well. And then as I started to get more and more out there, I started getting bigger and bigger guests until eventually...
Who's the biggest guest you ever had?
It's an interesting question because some may think...
How do you define?
Exactly, because I would say, how do you define that? I just had Jay Abraham on my show. I mean, the legend, right? Everybody knows Jay. That's a big catch. He's really, really not easy to get hold of. And so that was my most recent big guy. I had Peter Shankman on my show. John Vroman was awesome. I love John. I had JP Sears recently. I had the that was like, really, honestly, it was one of my best interviews because we had such a good time. We had such a laugh. And he said to me that out of the 900 plus interviews he's done, that was one of the top interviews he's ever done. So that was for me like, here you go, massive. So
that's almost worth a blue check. I mean, right there. Just nail that into Facebook.
Getting to do a video on YouTube and it'll go viral, and then Facebook will pick it up and say, "Hey, Daniel Gefen is celebrity." My favorite episodes, I had the leading FBI hostage negotiator on my show.
Nice.
Yeah, so he led. There was a Chase Bank hostage bank robbery, and he was the negotiator. So he actually dealt with the perpetrators at the bank, and he pretty much, what I did was I kind of, because it's a business show, I asked him how to like relate that to business, like how do you become good at negotiating in business. So that was really awesome. I had the smartest man alive on my show, a guy called Walter O'Brien.
Here's where I ask you, how do you decide? How do you define? I mean, you're pretty smart. You know, there's some other pretty smart people. How's this guy the smartest guy alive? Is he like a trillionaire? How many patents does he have?
Okay, so he's got an IQ of 197. Einstein's was 165.
Wow.
He's got.
So he's published the grand unified theory of everything?
Well, he did hack into NASA when he was 13 years old from his bedroom, and they sent down a team to him. He was an island at the time. This is a really crazy story, so I'll keep it very short. But basically, imagine little Walter's in school with his backpack, right? He's coming home, and suddenly he sees his parents standing there with like Homeland Security, right? And they basically bashed down the door and they did the whole, raid, wow. Right? And parents were like, we don't know anything about any, like, and they realized that they clearly don't know. And they said, well, who else is in the house? And they said, well, we have a 13-year-old son. He's at school. And they have a 15-year-old son, right? Anyway, they go into his bedroom. Listen to this. They go into his bedroom, and pinned up on his wall is a massive poster of the blueprints of the space shuttle. Okay, that's what he hacked. He basically printed the blueprints of the shuttle. Anyway, the story gets better. So little Walter O'Brien comes home from school, and they arrest him. They say, we have to extradite you to the US for questioning, and you're in serious trouble, young man. And he said, well, technically no. And they looked at him, what do you mean technically no? And he takes out of his backpack an extradition waiver that he put together, which basically made him untouchable, and they couldn't extradite him. So they ended up... Yeah, they ended up sitting with him, and pretty much they made a deal with him, and he became the youngest, I guess, contractor to the U.S. government, and he ended up working with Homeland and the FBI and the intelligence, and that was my craziest interviews.
Unbelievable. So let's talk a little bit about platforms. Maybe let's start with video, live video, like what we're doing right now. Live video is all the rage. We know this. Facebook is all in on live video. Probably following some others' footsteps. Maybe obviously Twitter had Periscope for a long time. I'm a user of Periscope and other things like that. And there were some entrants in that before as well. Is live video going to take the place of podcasting, or are they different entities entirely? What's your opinion?
So it's a really good question. I'll tell you like this: a live streaming will never take over from podcasting for one simple reason. Podcasting you can listen to when you're running, when you're doing the dishes, when you're driving, yes, commuting. With live video, you can't watch it while you're driving, and if you do, okay, not a good idea. So you can't do it. We're very much in a generation where we're always on the go, right? Everybody's kind of multitasking, and it's so much easier to listen to a podcast and still get other things done. Whereas with live streaming, you've got to really sit there and you've got to be fully focused on it, because otherwise you're missing it. That's number one.
Yes.
Number two, what's really cool about podcasting is that it's evergreen. So the reason why people love podcasts is that you can be on my show, I could be on your show, and 3 years from now, someone could discover me and you. And, so you pretty much creating this evergreen content. With live video streaming, once it's done, it's pretty much done. Like, it's very hard for people to then discover it. It kind of gets lost in the...
Although with certainly with Facebook, with what we're doing right now, I'm going to post this afterwards, assuming Be Live, first time I'm using this platform, assuming they have that capability right here. And so that will last for a while. But you're right, it's pretty ephemeral because it's in the news feed, right? So once it's out of the news feed, when it's not very discoverable.
Correct. It's not discoverable at all, really. Right. Whereas with the podcast show, it's highly discoverable, and it will become more and more discoverable the more iTunes works on the rankings and ratings and stuff like that. But I will say some good things about live streaming, which is what we're doing now, is that we could be engaging our audience, which right now we're not doing. We probably should try to do that a little bit more. But what I find keeps people engaged is it's like when you talk, right? Have you ever given a speech on stage, John?
Oh yeah, multiple times.
Right. So one of the ways to keep the audience engaged is you ask them a question, like get them to respond, because otherwise people are like kind of just zoning out in their own little thoughts. The more you bring them in, the more they become part of the discussion. So what's cool about this is that we could ask people questions, they could type in the questions, and then we could say, oh, Alex Hamilton just asked blah blah blah. Now Alex is like really involved because Alex is now part of our discussion. It entices him to be more, it kind of gives him more of a reason to stay on the feed.
It's interesting. It's interesting because I've never personally really gotten into podcasting, in spite of very interesting shows like yours, interesting shows. Stuart Rogers, who's still at VentureBeat, I left there at least full time about a year ago, doing very interesting one with Travis Wright. And I'd love to hear these things, but I don't commute on a regular basis. I'm working my home office generally. And B, when I work out, I want to listen to music that just gets me sort of pumped and everything like that. And other times I'm with people. So it's like I don't have this sort of lost time, which I can fill with a podcast. When I want to spend time learning something, I can read at 4 to 5 times the speed of listening to somebody talk. So it's really challenging for me. What do you say to somebody like me?
You might not be the right audience. Very simple. It's not for I'm being very honest with you. And I'll tell you this, I'm very interesting. I think you're a visual person, clearly, right? From the fact that you read and the fact that you like to watch. So you're more of a visual person. I actually happen to also be very visual. I much prefer, even when I'm listening, I want to see the person's face. Like I want to see a YouTube video of them, right? It's just but that's just me and that's you. Now, I don't know, I haven't done the statistics, nor probably do I have the interest to do the statistics on it, but I'm sure like a good portion of the world that are more, audio rather than visual. So for those people, it was also, think about how many people are into running, right? There's a lot of people that are running now in the morning or whatever. And yeah, they could listen to music, but at the same time, they could be learning a new skill. They could be, learning more information. So, there's 500,000 podcast shows out there, and there's a reason for that. There's a massive audience. So,
cool. Okay, awesome. It's interesting because when you do live video or video, period, you've got a lot of platform challenges. Where am I going to do it? Am I going to do it on Twitter? Now Twitter is bringing video natively onto the platform, and Periscope videos you can show natively on the platform. Am I going to do it on Facebook? Am I going to do it on YouTube? For instance, if I'm somebody who has at least, I think it was 10,000 followers or 1,000 followers, you can now do live video on YouTube. You got to think about all those platforms. And I know some people who have a pretty technical rig, actually. They have like 3 phones set up and a camera, and they're doing their thing. They're doing their live video, and they're streaming to 3 or 4 different platforms simultaneously, including some new ones, some ones that are just starting up, some little startup ones. And so they've got a pretty significant rig with, at minimum, thousands of dollars of investment to actually make that live video happen, and make it happen sort of not platform independent, but multi-platform. With podcasting, you don't have the same struggle on the creation and capture side, but you have a similar struggle on the publication and distribution side, right? I mean, you've got iTunes, you've got a number of different outlets that have podcasts, and discoverability for podcasting, and also understanding your total reach and your stats for how many people are getting them and what they're doing, how long they're listening, when they're dropping off and stuff like, is challenging. Can you talk a little bit about that?
To be honest with you, it's actually it's very unknown right now. And in fact, I would challenge those of you watching, those of you that will watch this as well. You know, it could be a way to make a ton of money, to be honest with you, because it's right now it's a very untapped space. It's very unknown. Nobody knows what the numbers are. It's a trust-based thing. If you ask me how many downloads I've got, I could lie, and I'll be very honest with you. The people in the space, we know for a fact that some of the guys who are claiming that they've got certain numbers, we know that they're fudging those numbers. We know that they're kind of like, making them up, let's just say, right?
Yes.
And the thing is, if somebody came up with a tool or some sort of like a way to find out those numbers, that would be worth a ton of money. So for those of you watching, if you're looking for an opportunity, this is definitely an opportunity. And as you said before, also in terms of aggregating data, really, really, really good opportunity, especially right now, because podcasting is really hot. It's a massive trend, and I really see it being a very long-term play as well.
Cool.
So
cool. Do you do transcripts for your podcasts? Because I know that there's some services out there that I think for like $20, $30 to $100 or whatever, they do a transcript. Then you can publish it as a blog post. Is that even a good idea? What do you think?
You know what I say to that is, lots of things are good ideas. In other words, I could literally come up with 1,000 things I can do today or tomorrow, right? The problem is I feel like if you're not ultra focused on where you're going, then you can end up just like running around doing so many different things that you end up really kind of just spreading yourself too thin. At least in my personal life, like I've tried so many different things, and then I just realized, like, hold on, Daniel, you're really good at this. Just stick to this. Be really good at that, and build yourself up. Because, like, I'll give you an example, John. I see people on like every social media platform. Like, you could find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Snapchat, YouTube. Like, how in the hell are you managing to build a business, build a brand, build a following, and manage all of those platforms? No way. There's no way. And not only that, no way that you're dominating any of those platforms. You can't. It's impossible. So, like, for me, my focus is Facebook. Like, I tried Snapchat and I tried Twitter and even Instagram. Like, I'll post a nice little cute quote every day just because for some reason everybody loves quotes. But my main focus is Facebook, and I have mined my Facebook, and I've really built it up to a point where, you can really build a business just on Facebook, and there are people who are literally building very successful businesses just on LinkedIn. and some people just on Instagram. But don't like spread yourself so thin that you're not really doing anything that well.
You know, that's a really interesting perspective, and I love to hear it, because I think a lot of us who are to some degree public figures, to some degree influencers, are always thinking about that and kind of worried about that. Okay, so I'm doing okay on Twitter, but is Twitter going places? You know, what about Facebook? Am I good on Instagram? Am I good on? And we're trying to furiously publish content on every little place and every big place, frankly. And it's like a game of whack-a-mole. I'll hit it here, I'll hit it here, I'll hit it here, I'll hit it here. And it's always shifting around and moving. I think there is some value in ensuring that you have a foothold in different places, because you never know what's going to grow and just go massive and everything like that. I think there's some value there. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying is, you know what, be great at one thing or maybe a couple things, you know, really focus and be really, really good there, because you can't be all things to all people. Of course, there's a few people who can, right? If you're an absolute real life, full on movie star, right? Or maybe you're Gary Vee, and you're uber famous everywhere. But maybe until you've maxed the potential of the one or two social networks that you really work well on, you should hold off on looking at everything else. That's an interesting perspective. I really, really appreciate that, actually. We're going to have to wrap this up pretty soon. Did you have any final comments to end with?
Final comments. I didn't think that was coming. Not really. I mean, if there was any questions from anybody in the audience, anybody wanted to ask any questions, you know, fire away. Or if anybody has any. Yeah, so there we go. Questions.
Here's one right now. Question from Scott Brooks, and I apologize, Scott. There's some default comments here from BeLive that showed up from before other stuff, and I didn't see yours till now, so I apologize. He had a question. He says, if a company is looking to use video as part of their strategy, what sort of frequency do you need to maintain? And what's the length of time that's optimal to maintain interest? You know, 1 by 1 hour live stream better or worse than 4 15-minute sessions? Any thoughts on that, Daniel?
Yeah, and the answer is it really depends. So first of all, to answer your first question in terms of frequency. Okay, so look, in terms of frequency, whatever it is, whether it's every day, once a month, once a week, consistency is the most important thing. It's not about how often it is, but more importantly is you got to stick, because people like consistency. So the thing that I like about Gary Vee is that I know that every single day there's a daily V, and I can rely on that. Like, so when I have my lunch, I can switch on, I can go on YouTube and I can type in Daily V, and there he is. You know, Shark Tank comes out every single, you know, I think it's Saturday night, whatever it is. So I know that every single Saturday night, you know, Shark Tank's available. It's all about consistency. People are very, especially in the world that we live in, where people, like, they lack consistency. I think our generation lacks that. So when we see something that's consistent, we feel like we need that, right? We need that. And we also tend to respect and like people more who are consistent, because, you know, one of the things with my podcast show, right, is that I publish an episode every single week. And I have people who have come up to me and be like, Daniel, you're still doing it. Like, every week you keep coming up with another episode. And I'll be honest with you, surprised, because I've never been that consistent in my life, right? So that's number one. I think for the sake of the audience, but also I think for the sake of you yourself, when you're consistent with something, you just keep doing it. And even when you don't feel like it, you know that, oh, I've been doing this for 6 months every week. I need to keep it up, like, even if I don't feel like it this week.
You know, it's interesting. I'm not huge on subscribing to and watching shows on YouTube. It takes a lot of time. My oldest son, who is really into watching YouTube, he doesn't watch TV. I mean, unless we're watching as a family, he's watching YouTube, and he gets seriously pissed off if ETH0, whoever ETH0 is, he's some YouTube influencer star that my son watches, probably publishing on Minecraft or something like that. If he doesn't upload his daily video when he's supposed to, my son Ethan is ticked off. He's looking forward to that. And you know what? He's working all day long at school, and he's learning and he's studying and taking his tests, and he's coming home. He's expecting the reward that ETH0 has published a video on YouTube. So I've heard from him multiple times on the few occasions when that influencer doesn't. So I love what you're saying. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Carolyn, put her on screen right here, being focused on what you're doing. Don't spread yourself too thin. Really, really good. Awesome. Carolyn also said people like consistency, you know, absolutely. And she said as well that people are liked more if they're consistent and persistent. Awesome. Daniel, it's been such a pleasure to chat. And I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Thanks so much for being here. I think you've kind of inspired me to maybe do something like this, maybe even do it consistently. So thank you so much.
I'll remind you said that.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Please share, like, whatever you want, comment. Daniel and I, I'm sure, will be looking at the comments as well and seeing if there's something we can add to that. And have a great day, all.
Thank you so much, John. Take care, everybody. This is usually the part